January 10th, 1945, 14:30 hours. 2nd Command Post, Hatten, Alsace. A man crouched over a Browning M1919A4 strapped to a wooden table. The barrel glowed red, superheated. 48 hours of continuous fire. The man wore glasses held together with field wire. The lenses were cracked. Around his boots lay thousands of spent 30-06 Springfield casings, forming golden piles that reached his ankles. 40-plus soldiers from the 21st Panzer Division dead by his hands. Hatten was 90% destroyed. The temperature stood at -10 Celsius. The man was alone. He had been alone for 2 days. Vito R. Bertoldo, coal miner from Decatur, Illinois, rejected by the draft. Poor eyesight, they said. Too weak, they said. The army made him a cook. His commanders called him a discipline problem. Now he sat behind a machine gun that weighed 14 kilograms, firing at Germans who kept coming and kept dying and kept coming. If you want to know how a miner, nearly blind with broken glasses, used what he learned 600 feet underground to hold 2 German battalions alone, you need to understand what happens when a man who works in darkness his entire life finally sees daylight through the reticle of a Browning. December 1916, Decatur, Illinois, Central Illinois coal country. Vito Bertoldo was born into a world that existed underground. By age 17, he was working the Springfield coal seam 600 feet below the surface. The Decatur Coal Company employed over 600 men. Shifts ran 12 hours. The seam was 4 feet high. Men worked crouched or crawling. The tools were simple: 8-pound pickaxe, shovel, carbide lamp mounted on a cloth cap. The darkness underground was absolute. Without the lamp, you saw nothing. Not your hand, not the wall, nothing. The air was thin. Coal dust filled your lungs with every breath. Cave-ins killed men in seconds. You learned to listen. A creak in the timber support beams meant the ceiling was shifting. A sound like wind, where there should be no wind, meant gas build-up. Methane. Odorless. A single spark, and the tunnel became a crematorium. Bertoldo worked 9 years in those tunnels. He developed skills that had nothing to do with war, but everything to do with survival. His eyes adapted to low light. He could detect movement in near darkness that other men would miss. Underground, you learned that movement was sound before it was image. You heard the rat scurrying before you saw it. You heard rock shifting before the collapse. His hands became calloused from years gripping the pickaxe handle, 50-pound bags of coal carried for hours. His body learned to function in confined spaces where panic meant death. The geometry of tunnels became instinctive. You navigated by feel and memory. You knew which shaft connected to which seam without thinking. Bertoldo never considered these skills valuable. They were simply what you did to survive another shift, another day, another year. Then December 7th, 1941 happened, and everything changed. Pearl Harbor, the draft. Bertoldo went to enlist voluntarily. He wanted to fight. The medical examiner tested his vision. Failed. Thick glasses, severe myopia. Exact prescription not documented in surviving records, but severe enough to warrant rejection. The recruiting officer told him, "Go home. You cannot see well enough to shoot Germans." Bertoldo was humiliated. His friends from the mine were accepted. He was sent home. But Bertoldo was stubborn. The kind of stubborn that keeps a man swinging a pickaxe for 12 hours, 600 feet underground. He enlisted again in 1942, different recruiting office. He passed, but they made him a cook, military police cook. He did not come to cook. He came to fight. For 2 years he argued, he petitioned, he requested transfer. Finally, in December 1944, his transfer came through. 42nd Infantry Division, Rainbow Division, Company A, 242nd Infantry Regiment, Alsace, France. By then, Bertoldo had made himself unpopular with his mess sergeant. The exact reason is not documented, but Bertoldo had a reputation, discipline problem. When the battalion command requested 3 soldiers per company for command post security, the company commander, Captain William Corson, saw an opportunity. Send Bertoldo. Get him out of the company. A punishment disguised as duty. January 8, 1945, evening, Hatten, Alsace. Typical Alsatian village, stone and brick buildings, 3 to 4 stories, small windows, narrow streets 4 to 6 meters wide between structures. The command post was an old French bakery at the northern entrance of the village. Bertoldo arrived with a Browning M1919A4. The weapon weighed 14 kilograms, 31 pounds. The barrel was 609 millimeters long, rate of fire 400 to 600 rounds per minute, effective range 1,400 meters under ideal conditions, belt-fed, 250-round cloth belts. Bertoldo had never received formal training on the weapon. He learned by watching, by doing. The M1919A4 was tripod-mounted. The setup was positioned in the street facing north, the primary approach into Hatten. Temperature was -10 Celsius. Water froze in canteens within minutes. The ground was frozen solid. Intelligence reports indicated the Germans were concentrating forces north of Hatten. Operation Nordwind, Hitler's attempt to recapture Alsace and Strasbourg. The 21st Panzer Division was identified in the sector, approximately hundreds of men with armour support. January 9, 1945, 03:47 hours. Bertoldo was alerted. Battalion staff informed him evacuation of the command post might be necessary within hours. Hold as long as possible, they said. Bertoldo positioned himself behind the M1919A4 in the street. Darkness was total. Dawn would not arrive until 0800 hours. New moon. 0 natural illumination. Bertoldo's eyes adjusted. 9 years underground had trained them for this. He waited. At 0500 hours he heard it. The sound came before the visual. Tank treads on frozen ground, metallic clanking, rhythmic, growing louder. Then the shape emerged from darkness, 60 meters away, a German heavy tank. Likely a Tiger, though some accounts suggest a Panzer IV. The silhouette was massive. 57 tons of armour, 88mm main gun. The tank advanced slowly down the narrow street. It did not see Bertoldo in the darkness. Bertoldo's finger rested on the trigger. He calculated. 30 caliber rounds would not penetrate tank armour. If he fired, the tank would kill him. He did not fire. The tank passed, treads grinding, exhaust fumes. Then it was gone. Bertoldo waited. 10 minutes later, different sound. Diesel engines, lighter. 2 German half-tracks descended the street. SdKfz 251 armoured personnel carriers. Approximately 20 Panzer Grenadiers in each vehicle. The half-tracks stopped 30 meters from Bertoldo's position. Rear doors opened. Infantry dismounted. MP-40 submachine guns, KAR-98K rifles, MG-42 portable machine gun. The soldiers formed a line. They began advancing up the street toward Bertoldo's position. 25 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters. Bertoldo waited. Underground, you do not strike the coal seam too early. You wait for the correct moment. You let the enemy close. 15 meters. Bertoldo squeezed the trigger. The M1919A4 fired. The sound was not the sharp crack of a rifle. It was deeper, rhythmic. 400 rounds per minute. Bertoldo held the trigger for 6 seconds, approximately 50 rounds. The first row of Panzer Grenadiers collapsed, 8 to 10 men dead within 6 seconds. The remaining Germans dove for cover. Bertoldo released the trigger. The belt was empty. 250 rounds expended. He needed to reload. Normally, the M1919A4 required 2 men, gunner and assistant gunner. Bertoldo was alone. He released the feed tray, pulled a fresh belt from the ammunition box, threaded it into the mechanism, closed the tray. 12 seconds. During those 12 seconds, the Germans returned fire, MP-40s, KAR-98Ks. Bullets snapped past his head. Supersonic cracks, the sound of rounds passing within inches. Bertoldo ignored them. He chambered a round, resumed firing. 8-second burst, 60 to 70 rounds. The remaining infantry fell or retreated behind the half-tracks. The half-tracks reversed. Their coaxial MG-42s fired 1,200 rounds per minute, the sound of an electric saw. Bullets struck the ground around Bertoldo. He pressed himself behind the M1919A4, not adequate cover, but all he had. The Germans sent more infantry, groups of 10 to 15 men advancing in tactical rushes. Bertoldo fired in controlled bursts, 4 to 6 seconds each, 30 to 50 rounds per burst. His training as a miner informed his discipline. Underground, you conserve your carbide lamp. Fuel is limited. Above ground, you conserve ammunition. Ammunition is limited. Over the next 2 hours, Bertoldo killed an estimated 10 to 15 more Germans. Bodies began piling in the street. They created obstacles. Bertoldo adjusted his angle of fire to shoot over the corpses. At 0800 hours, dawn arrived. Visibility improved. Bertoldo saw what he faced. Hundreds of German soldiers concentrated north of his position. Tanks, half-tracks, infantry. Too many. A German Panzer IV advanced to 75 yards, 68 meters. The turret rotated. The 75mm main gun aimed directly at Bertoldo. Bertoldo grabbed the M1919A4, dragged it into the bakery. 31 pounds of weapon plus tripod, approximately 50 pounds total. 12 seconds to move alone. The Panzer fired. The high-explosive round detonated exactly where Bertoldo had been 5 seconds earlier. A 2-meter crater appeared in the street. Inside the bakery, Bertoldo repositioned. He unstrapped the weapon from the tripod, used rope from his pack to secure the M1919A4 to a heavy wooden table. The table was against a wall. He angled the weapon toward a window facing the main street. Better cover, better concealment. He resumed firing. Another wave of German infantry advanced. Bertoldo fired through the window. 8 to 10 Germans fell. The battalion staff watched him work. They said nothing. The sound of the M1919A4 filled the building. Brass casings clattered onto the wooden floor. They began accumulating, piles of spent 30-06 rounds forming small hills around Bertoldo's boots. The Germans adapted. They stopped advancing in daylight. Instead, they probed at night. Mortars began targeting the bakery. The first rounds landed 40 yards short, the second salvo 20 yards short. The third salvo would hit. Bertoldo recognized the pattern. Same pattern as underground when a tunnel section begins to collapse. First the small rocks, then larger rocks, then the ceiling. He moved. He relocated the M1919A4 to a different window. The third salvo struck the position he had just vacated. Explosions, debris, smoke. Bertoldo resumed firing from the new position. Midnight between January 9th and 10th, exact time not documented but estimated around 0200 hours on the 10th, an officer approached Bertoldo. "We are evacuating this command post. New location 400 yards to the rear, more substantial structure, stone construction, better defensive position." Bertoldo was ordered to prepare to move. He continued firing. Another group of Germans attempting to infiltrate the village. Bertoldo killed 5 to 6 with a sustained burst. The officer repeated the order. Bertoldo looked at him. "Someone needs to cover the withdrawal." The officer understood. "How long can you hold?" "Long enough," Bertoldo said. The staff began evacuating. Bertoldo was alone. He calculated. 10 to 12 officers evacuating, 400 yards to the alternate command post, exposed terrain, narrow streets. Germans have line of sight. The staff needed 20 to 30 minutes for safe withdrawal. Bertoldo had approximately 1,000 rounds remaining, 4 belts. The Germans outside numbered in the hundreds. Conclusion: he would likely die here. Bertoldo had survived worse. 600 feet underground when timber supports cracked and the ceiling began collapsing. He survived. He would survive this, or he would not. Either way, the staff would escape. He heard boots running, the rear door closing, silence inside the building. Outside, tank engines, German voices. Bertoldo adjusted his grip on the M1919A4, waited. January 10th, 1945, 0600 hours, morning. Bertoldo had been firing from the same window for 3 hours. A German tank observed his position, calculated his location. A Stug 3 assault gun with a 75mm gun began targeting the window. Bertoldo recognized the danger. The tank knew where he was. He needed to move. He unstrapped the M1919A4 from the table, moved to a window on the opposite side of the building, west-facing instead of east-facing, 90-degree angle change. He repositioned, resumed firing. The Germans advancing up the eastern street were now exposed from their flank. They did not expect fire from that direction. Bertoldo fired a 6-second burst. 15 to 20 Germans collapsed. Confusion in their ranks, shouting, soldiers scrambling for cover. The Stug 3 rotated its gun toward the new window. Bertoldo needed to move again. This became his pattern. Fire 4 to 6 seconds, move to a different window before the tank could adjust. The M1919A4 weighed 31 pounds. Each movement required lifting the weapon, carrying it, repositioning it, 12 seconds per move. The tank crew required 15 to 20 seconds to identify the new firing position, rotate the turret, aim, fire. Bertoldo had a 3 to 8 second margin, not much, but enough. Underground, when a shaft collapses, you do not stop moving. You keep moving or you die. Same principle. Keep moving or die. He moved 6 times in 2 hours. Each time the German tank fired at the position he had just vacated. Explosions, brick and stone shrapnel. The building was being systematically destroyed around him. During one movement, the ammunition belt jammed. The cloth feed belt tangled in the mechanism. Normally, this required 2 men to clear, gunner and assistant gunner. Bertoldo was alone. 18 seconds to clear the jam. During those 18 seconds, German infantry advanced to within 25 meters of the building. When Bertoldo resumed firing, they were nearly at the entrance. He fired a 5-second burst. 10 to 12 Germans fell. The rest retreated. He was thirsty. 48 hours, no water. His canteen had frozen solid within the first 6 hours. The battalion staff had taken all potable water when they evacuated. Bertoldo found a broken wine bottle on the floor, half full, approximately 250 milliliters, French wine, warm, mixed with brick dust and gunpowder residue. He drank it. The liquid burned his cracked lips, but it was hydration. He resumed firing. At approximately 1100 hours on January 10th, a German self-propelled 88mm gun began direct fire on the bakery. The first round landed 40 yards short, exploded in the street. The second round, 20 yards short, closer. The third round struck the building. The 88mm high-explosive shell penetrated the stone wall, detonated inside the room where Bertoldo was positioned. The concussion launched him across the room. His back struck the opposite wall, 4 meters away. Effects: eardrums lightly perforated, vision blurred from concussion, air expelled from lungs. His glasses fell off. He crawled, searched, found them. The lenses were cracked, more cracks than before. He used wire from his equipment to bind the frame, put them back on. The ceiling was collapsing, timber beams cracking. The sound was identical to a mine shaft collapse. Bertoldo recognized it instantly. You exit or you die buried. He grabbed the M1919A4, left the remaining ammunition. No time. He ran. Out the back door, through the streets of Hatten, under fire. A German MG-42 opened up. 1,200 rounds per minute. Bullets struck walls around him, stone fragments. Bertoldo ran with 31 pounds on his shoulder. The ground was ice. He slipped, fell. Knee struck frozen ground. He stood, continued. 400 yards, 366 meters. He sprinted, lungs burning, legs burning. Bullets snapping, supersonic cracks, ricochets. 90 seconds. He reached the alternate command post, a 3-story stone building, small windows. He stumbled through the entrance. Battalion staff from a different unit stared. "Who are you?" Bertoldo did not answer. He climbed the stairs, 2nd floor, found a window, positioned the M1919A4 on the stone sill, resumed firing. His thought as he climbed, this is like descending a shaft during a collapse. You do not stop moving. You move or die. The alternate command post. Bertoldo positioned the weapon facing east. Germans concentrated force on this building. Panzer IV, Stug 3, 88mm self-propelled gun. Infantry estimated over 100 men. Bertoldo fired between tank salvos. When a tank fired, he ducked. When it stopped to reload, he rose and fired. Last ammunition belt. 250 rounds, he calculated. 50 rounds per burst equals 5 bursts. approximately 30 seconds of active fire time remaining. Then, nothing. This is the end. He accepted it. The 88mm gun advanced, stopped at approximately 3 to 5 meters from the building, point-blank range. The crew positioned the gun with its muzzle nearly inside the building. The citation from his Medal of Honor states, placing the muzzle of its gun almost inside the building, fired into the room. The 88mm fired. High explosive shell detonated inside the room. Bertoldo was thrown against the wall, second time in 3 hours. Concussion, eardrums ruptured, blood from nose and ears, breathing difficult, possible rib fractures. Other soldiers in the command post were seriously wounded, some killed. Bertoldo lay on the floor, could not hear, only a high-pitched ringing. His glasses had fallen again. He crawled, found them, put them on. They were held together by wire and luck, barely functional, but functional enough. An American bazooka team on the lower floor fired an M9A1 bazooka, 2.36-inch rocket with heat warhead, struck the 88mm gun in the side. Weaker armor. The vehicle ignited. Black smoke, flames. German crew evacuated. 4 to 5 men jumping from the burning vehicle. Bertoldo, dazed and bleeding, returned to the M1919A4, fired his last burst. 4 to 6 crew members fell. Citation, went back to his machine gun, dazed as he was, and killed several of the hostile troops as they attempted to withdraw. A German tank at less than 50 yards fired at the command post. 75mm high explosive rounds struck the room. Direct hit. The M1919A4 was destroyed. The mechanism shattered. Inoperable. Bertoldo was thrown across the room a third time in 8 hours. He hit the wall, fell, did not move for 5 seconds. German infantry, seeing the fire cease, began their final assault, advancing from 30 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters. Bertoldo stood. He had no machine gun. He found white phosphorus grenades, 3 grenades, pulled the pins, threw them through the window. The grenades detonated among the advancing Germans. White phosphorus burns at 1500 degrees Celsius, cannot be extinguished with water. Screaming. White smoke. Germans broke, retreated. An officer shouted evacuation order. Everyone leaves. Before the order could be executed, Germans attacked again, more intense. Tank support, heavy artillery. Bertoldo picked up an M1 Garand rifle from a wounded soldier. The officer shouted, "Sergeant, we are leaving!" Bertoldo, "You go, I cover." The citation states, with a rifle, single-handedly covered the withdrawal of his fellow soldiers when the post was finally abandoned. Bertoldo, positioned at a window, Garand rifle, 8 rounds, fired. The en-bloc clip ejected with its distinctive ping, reloaded. 8 rounds, fired, reloaded. Germans stopped advancing. Officers evacuated through the rear. Bertoldo alone again. Sunset, January 10th, 1945, approximately 14:30 hours. Reinforcements from 79th Infantry Division and elements of 42nd Division broke through German lines. Soldiers entered the alternate command post. They found Bertoldo barely conscious. Citation, still gripping the machine gun, even though it was destroyed. Around him, thousands of spent 30-06 casings, golden piles reaching his ankles. His glasses cracked, held together with wire, still on his face. Wounds, multiple shrapnel injuries, severe contusions from 3 separate explosions, perforated eardrums, temporary deafness, minor white phosphorus burns, severe dehydration, extreme exhaustion from 48 hours without sleep, uniform soaked with frozen sweat, blood, gunpowder. Total time, 48 hours continuous combat, alone, except for first hours at primary command post. Confirmed kills, 40+ German soldiers from 21st Panzer Division. Battalion intelligence officers walked through Hatten's streets after the battle, counted bodies. 40 confirmed German dead in the streets near the 2 command posts. Disposition, scattered in kill zones, distances ranging from 5 meters to 50 meters from Bertoldo's firing positions. Note, in official records, all knew the number was higher. Germans evacuated wounded and dead during lulls. Estimated actual casualties, 60 to 80 caused by Bertoldo. 1st Battalion, 242nd Infantry, 517 men successfully evacuated from both command posts because of Bertoldo's defense. No staff officers captured, no classified documents lost. Battalion casualties over 3 days, January 9th through 11th, 66%. Started with 781 men, ended with 264 effectives. But the line held. Hatten held for 10 more days, until January 20th. Operation Nordwind failed. Strasbourg remained in Allied hands. December 18th, 1945, White House, Washington, D.C. President Harry S. Truman presented the Medal of Honor to Master Sergeant Vito R. Bertoldo. Citation: he fought with extreme gallantry while guarding 2 command posts against the assault of powerful infantry and armoured forces which had overrun the battalion's main line of resistance for more than 48 hours without rest or relief, time after time, escaping death only by the slightest margin while killing at least 40 hostile soldiers and wounding many more during his grim battle against the enemy hordes. General Dwight D. Eisenhower requested private conversation with Bertoldo after ceremony. Content of conversation not documented. Eisenhower was impressed. Bertoldo was discharged in 1946, moved to California, Marin County, worked for Veterans Administration, 1946 to 1958. Started landscaping business in 1958, married. Family details minimal in public records. His only documented public comment, "All I did was try to protect some other American soldiers from being killed. At no time did I have in mind that I was trying to win something." He never spoke about Hatten except when required. He received Silver Star, Bronze Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, Purple Heart, Combat Infantryman Badge, French Croix de Guerre. July 23, 1966, Veterans Hospital, Martinez, California. Vito R. Bertoldo died of lung cancer, age 49. Possible exposure: 9 years breathing coal dust in mines, plus 48 hours breathing combat smoke, gunpowder, white phosphorus explosions. Cause of death consistent with occupational and combat exposure. He was buried with military honors. The coal miner rejected by the draft, who became a cook, who became a discipline problem, who held 2 German battalions alone for 48 hours, was gone. What he learned 600 feet underground in darkness saved 517 men in daylight in Hatten. The skills the army said were worthless turned out to be exactly what was needed when everything else failed. Bertoldo did not go back underground, but what he learned down there kept him alive up here long enough to make sure 517 other men went home.